Hey everyone, Seth Mariano here, and welcome to the More Layers season finale. I say that because this is going to be the last episode for at least a few months. Practices for the next Artists Unlimited show are going to be starting up on Monday. We don't know the schedule yet, but I guess it's going to be twice or so a week of sessions for that. And I think because this was the case last time, we'll perform in November, the week before Thanksgiving. I know that was what it was last time. So there won't be any new episodes for a while after this one, but in the meantime, you can stream all the episodes we have out on all our platforms, and I'll include detailed information on that at the end of this show. In the meantime, feel free to Facebook message and YouTube comment with any questions, comments, whatever. As you may have noticed, it's just me this time. And this time it's because Jordan is away for his sister's wedding. Shout out to Julia and her groom. Also, my congratulations to Jordan's brother Steve and his wife on the kid on the way. Shout out to Jordan's mom as well. So, I'm going to talk today about something that is probably not thought about as much as it should be. Specifically, I'm talking about who's to blame for a star's problems. In a lot of minds, this may seem like a no-brainer, probably because all they see or hear about is what they themselves did. But is it all their fault? Is there a role that people close to them play in influencing their behaviors? It may be more complicated than you think. Is it all their own fault, as I guess most would say? Is it all the fault of the people close to them, as the biopic Rocketman would probably suggest? Is it somewhere in between? While preparing thoughts for this episode, and even before that, I've written down a few examples of stories that I think can kind of illustrate the answer. Also, to prepare for this episode, I reached out on Facebook, asking any friends what they thought. One chimed in and said, "I taught my kids when you become an adult, take responsibility and stop blaming others in your past for the problems you have." So it sounds like this person believes there's at least a partial degree of responsibility that technically falls on the parents or whoever's bringing them up, and that's the case when they're kids. And one of the first stories that I actually thought of for this topic, and it might support that argument, is a story not necessarily about a celebrity or a Hollywood celebrity, but technically about a group of celebrities on a high school campus. So a few years ago, I saw a Lifetime movie based on the true story of a group collectively known as the Fab Five. This was a group of cheerleaders at a Texas high school who kept getting away with bad stuff. According to the film, these girls drank on campus, they started fights at school, they'd come in dressed inappropriately, and it was evident that adults working in the school knew about this and didn't approve of this behavior, and some of them directly confronted them, but it pretty much got nowhere. The girls pretty much asserted dominance over these adults and more or less just ignored the warnings or confrontations. Their cheerleading coach was very aware of a lot of what they were doing and tried her best talking to the principal and her crew about it. I think one of the cheerleaders was the principal's daughter, if I remember right. From what I remember, the principal just kept making excuses. Beware of spoilers. It got to an eventual point where the coach went to the press for help. The investigators concluded this was a serious problem, and it was fueled or whatever by the principal's bad parenting and maybe the other cheerleaders' parents' bad parenting, something like that. I'm pretty sure those Fab Five were still living under a parent's roof. And so technically, I think they were still an older person's responsibility to a degree. And when you live at home, your parents or caretakers, in a way, are probably the people you're most acquainted with, or the people most involved in your life. Then I guess there comes a point when you have to grow up, move on, be your own person, and take all the responsibility for your own stuff from that point. But kids typically need a long number of years to learn to think for themselves. So odds are, I think, how you conduct yourself and talk and act, whatever, in their presence is gonna naturally be programmed into your DNA as an older person. Probably more than anything else. One other person commented, "It's not their fault that people pressure them and put their own problems and needs onto the star. It's a lot of responsibility. However, they are in charge of their own lives, and the consequences of their actions are their fault only. Placing blame or responsibility on another only diffuses the fact that they are responsible for their own lives." So someone like this person would probably tell you that they have perfect freedom to say no to pressures. And if the business is pushing them into something, like doing something they don't want to do, or looking away they don't want to look, or something else, then the trouble that arises is their own fault because they were passive, they didn't speak up, or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. And another story on my list that came back to my mind that I thought would be paired well with that idea is the story of Natalie Wood. If I remember right, her mom or her dad really wanted her to act, and she didn't seem that interested. If I remember what I read correctly, they kept pushing her into a bunch of gigs, to a point where I guess it was really hard for her to even think about saying no. At one point, I guess she dumped a boyfriend she really liked, just so she could commit to this gig or that gig, or some reason like that. Then I thought again to Michael Jackson's story. It sounded like he wasn't that enthusiastic about making music. That it was pretty much something his dad forced him to do all the time when he was a kid. That pressure and his dad's constant abuse. I have felt like that really destroyed Michael's mental health in adulthood, and pretty much influenced his overall adult life behavior. So then I guess that begs the question, if one's adult personality is so chiefly shaped overall by the parents or guardians, what happens when there's a parent or guardian who is maybe technically responsible for them, but not really involved in their life? One of the other people I thought of was R. Kelly, who infamously, I believe, has been behind bars for a number of crimes against women. My senior pastor has openly stated his belief that there's a particularly large role that same-gender parents play in mentoring a kid. I don't know much about R. Kelly's story. From what I read, sounds like his dad was uninvolved all the time, or he never knew him at all, or something like that. He probably could have learned well from some other guy, but it probably would have been a whole lot easier had he had access in his own home to a strong paternal figure. So, who's to blame for a star's problems? There may be no easy answers. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for me today. We'll let you know when More Layers returns. Thank you all for watching, listening, and goodbye. Stream us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube.